officially with the microphone. We have to start now because it is 7 o'clock. And I believe everyone who will be here is here. Yes. Welcome, people. And we would like to have approval of the minutes. Did everyone have a chance to look at their minutes?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to approve the minutes of May 19th, 2016.
I second the motion.
So moved. Which brings us to Parks, Trails, and Recreation presentation by... No, sorry. May I have a... I got ahead of myself, sorry.
We have one person who's going to try and join us by cell phone.
This next week. Okay, now we will move on to the Parks, Trails, and Recreation presentation.
All right, thank you. I'm Joyce Manwaring. I'm the Parks and Recreation Director. And within our department, briefly, we have all the Recreation Center, the Active Adult Center, the historic facilities and structures, parks, open space, trails, facility maintenance and management, forestry, the trees, and flowers. So that's kind of a brief overview of the things that Parks and Recreation is responsible for. And I also want to thank you for volunteering to come and serve on this committee and be engaged with our projects and what we're looking forward to doing. So thank you. Okay, I want to start off by letting you know that we have a Parks and Recreation Master Plan. We have a newly adopted plan. It was adopted by City Council in 2014. And in that plan, it included a needs assessment as well as a trends report. We got a lot of information about our parks, the land, GIS data, amenities, sort of a mapping project as well to help us manage going forward. And then not so much a list of specific projects this time, but recommendations about improvements to some of our locations. So our 2006 master plan had very specific project recommendations. And at that time, we still had 3 undeveloped parks that we had land banked. That was Founders, Discovery, and Hopper Hollow. So those have been completed, which we're very glad that took about 16 years, but those parks are now completed. So we have a new master plan, and we're ready to go with some new recommendations. So those recommendations, they meet the identified needs as found in the needs assessment. And there is recommendation of a few specific projects. And then also, the master plan has criteria for project analysis and priorities. And excuse me, go to this. So I want to give you a little background on how we decide what projects we do and how those projects are funded. So our projects are funded, the CIP projects and our large maintenance projects are funded through Jefferson County Open Space tax. That's a half-cent sales tax that was on the ballot and voted in by the voters in 1974, I believe. And then it's redistributed to cities in the Jefferson County by their population. So we bring in, depending on the economy, about $900,000 a year now. 500 to about 550 of that is used for park maintenance salaries. Because what happened with the open space tax is the cities and counties began acquiring a lot of land, and then they didn't have the money to sustain the development and the maintenance, and so they changed the legislation to allow development of open space instead of just acquisition, and then they changed the legislation to include being able to pay for maintenance salaries. So that's pretty much where we are today. And every city does it a little bit differently, but we use about half for projects and about half for park maintenance salaries as we added employees to take care of those new facilities. So as we use that money, we have Jeffco open space tax and Colorado lottery funds. The lottery is redistributed based on proceeds, and we receive about $300,000 a year from the Colorado lottery. So that's how parks and open space funds their larger, as I said, CIP projects and maintenance items, large maintenance items. How we decide what to do in any given year is really a combination of things, and I won't go into a lot of detail unless you have questions later, but I have created a list of what we really look like, what it looks like when we decide what to do. For example, this year we're adding solid surfacing to a playground in Discovery Park based on the new ADA compliance issues. So sometimes code compliance comes into play when we decide what project to complete. How easy is it to implement? Do we have the land that we want to use? Variety of things that way. Economy of scale, does it make more sense to do it all now instead of do piecemeal to achieve the same end? The community significance and balance. Is it really important to the community? And another example would be, does that community or neighborhood need a park in their area? So I am glad to say that we have now completed all the recommended neighborhood parks with the completion of the last 3. And then what are the partnership opportunities for funding? So how can we leverage more money when we apply for a grant on a particular project? Is the Great Outdoors Colorado offering trails grants this year as opposed to playground grants? So we use that information to leverage which projects are chosen. Sometimes there's an urgent need, and then sometimes it completes the phasing of a current project. So we did Discovery Park in 2 phases in order to be able to fund the entire completion of the park. And then ongoing maintenance costs. We take a look at that to make sure that we can sustain whatever we build. And then that enters into the decision as well. So the first project I want to talk about tonight that was on the previous DIRT list was school site upgrades. And the priority for that has changed based on how our society has changed and our culture has changed. But the concept behind that was to take an elementary school like Prospect Park, or Prospect Elementary, perhaps take the fences down, add a picnic shelter, add picnic tables, make it more of a neighborhood park than just the playgrounds. But with new security issues and access, that really isn't a viable project anymore. So that it went down the priority list because it's just not feasible. We would like to do that type of project, but it doesn't work right now. So one of the changes that have come to light in the last just month or so is the Jeffco School District did put out a facility plan, and it does include closing Color Strand Elementary. So that has risen to the top of the list. It will be probably several years before they can do that and replace it or combine Color Strand with Prospect Elementary, but it is now on my radar screen because we help develop the back of Color Strand Elementary, and we maintain it. We actually mow it and take care of the irrigation system. We have 2 soccer fields back there, 2 t-ball fields. So it's really kind of moved to the forefront as a priority for our department to retain that area as playing fields for our youth programs, as well as an area for a neighborhood park. So that's one project that will require, that has become high priority in the next few years and will require acquisition dollars. And sometimes people think, well, it's public property, can't they just give it to you? Well, they need to maximize their assets the same way we would. The second project that's still of need is the Clear Creek Trail connections and trailheads. And we have made, I'm sorry, I'm not moving my PowerPoint. We have made some inroads with the Public Works project, CDOT grant on the east side of Kipling with a new pedestrian bridge. And then at the same time, we were able to build a new connection on the west side of Kipling at 41st, so that we're now off of 41st from an east-west direction. And that would always be the goal, to have a completely off-road, trail. We did create a crossing at the recreation center that goes under Kipling, but it is human nature to come across Kipling without, any safe crosswalk, and that is a state highway. So the bridge over Clear Creek at Kipling is on CDOT's list to be rebuilt. So when that occurs, we'll be having conversations with them about a trail connection at that area under that bridge, so that we can then connect Clear Creek Trail in a straighter direction. We do have Otis Trailhead, which is down on the east side of Wheat Ridge, as well as additional parts and pieces of the trail, Clear Creek Trail, which is a regional trail. It is on the National Register, or a recognized national trail. There are parts and pieces of it that need to be replaced, and we do chip away at those, but there are improvements that need to be made that could be packaged to make it a better trail and a more user-friendly trail. So I have a few pictures for you. One of the areas of the Clear Creek Trail on the upper left would be an area that would be replaced. So it's asphalt. It's still in, I would say, average shape, but the standard for trails is 10-foot wide concrete with a soft-sided trail next to it, and that's what you see below. Both of those, I think, are on the west side of Youngfield, even west of Prospect Park. The one on the bottom is now 10 years old. It was replaced at least that long ago. And then the Otis Trailhead is over on the right, and you can see it needs some help and has some drainage issues. So those are our trail projects right now that we would package together. And then the last project, or the third project, is Anderson Park. Prospect Park originally included the historic park, the Bauhaus over on 44th and Robb, and the historic park. That project was recommending acquisition of the two properties between those two properties, and that's no longer viable. They've been sold or reacquired. At the time, they were ready to go on the market. So the recommendation was to acquire both of those and create a larger historic park. So what I'm talking about tonight really is just Anderson Park, Prospect Park, and expansion of the recreation center. So we get many requests for expansion of the recreation center due to the growth in fitness and wellness classes, as well as our youth programming. So the combination of these three projects, they have to work together because they're interrelated. So in order to expand the recreation center, we would need to move the soccer field. In order to move the soccer field, we have to renovate Anderson Park. And the reason we'd want to move the soccer field is because there's no place to park. If we expand the recreation center, we would move parking into the soccer field. So that's the domino effect of these three projects. Right now we have adopted a master plan for Prospect Park. It has an estimated $5 million budget, and it includes total field renovation, the addition of a football field, renovation of the Burbert House as a small event rental area, a new restroom on the north end, new storage, better lake access, better parking lot access, separation of uses. So we're really excited about moving forward with the renovation of Prospect Park. There really hasn't been anything done to that park in over 25 years other than the new ball field lights. And it's heavily used. It has a lot of amenities and a lot of use in the park. I'm not sure we would design a park like that today. We just have a lot going on down there. It's a very busy trailhead, very busy, very well used for access to the Clear Creek Trail on that end of town, as well as a large picnic shelter that's rented every weekend. So we're in the process of doing that. Currently, we don't have funding for that. We have about $1 million worth of funding, and that's how we get things done, really. We try to phase them, try to write grants, combine them with what we have available. So we'll be doing that with Prospect this year. We'll be writing a GOCO grant, Great Outdoors Colorado, as well as a Jeffco Open Space grant, trying to combine those two things with our own money and get as much done as we can. And then we'll try to do that the following year. So it'd be nice to get it all done at one time. There's some economies of scale there for sure, not having to mobilize a contractor 2 or 3 times. So back to the expansion of the rec center, I talked a little bit about that. We would want to accommodate new programming that we don't have any space for, additional gymnasium space. There are fitness and wellness trends that we're not meeting. Our fitness equipment is pretty tight upstairs. So we hear this as much from our participants as I do from staff. And then we have youth licensed preschool and day camps. And they're in the center. They're back in our rental hallways, which keeps us from offering classes or renting out those facilities. And then we'd move the soccer field to expand parking. So Anderson Park. Anderson Park has become a favorite place to hold events like the Kite Fite Festival and the Carnation Festival. And it can accommodate those types of events, which are becoming more popular in our culture, across the metro area and across many states. It's not always a good fit. And inside Anderson Park, we have the Anderson Building, which was built in 1971. It's a metal building. They really have a 30-year lifespan and are not really meant to be permanent buildings. But we still use it. We use the fitness room and the gymnasium, and it has a small office in it. And it's also linked to our outdoor pool. So one of our master plan recommendations is to renovate and restore Anderson Park, and that would be the goal, is to replace the Anderson building, create more of a park that can support event space, and more functional, replace the pavilion, more walking paths, those kinds of things. So just upgrade that park and how the public likes to use it. In order to really do that correctly, and here's our domino effect of everything, we have a master plan, which you may have heard about, to move the parks operations facility in Anderson Park. There's 2 buildings, really 3 buildings there that support parks maintenance. One is at the entry to the park, which it used to be, it's been many, many things over the years, but we acquired it back in the late 90s, I believe, and it houses our administrative offices and our horticulture and forestry operations, and it has large storage. And then on the west side of Anderson Park, in another metal building, is our maintenance shops. So in order to really make Anderson Park the park we'd like to see it be to support the community and the needs, we need to move those 2 things out. And we also need to move them out because they're really not sufficient to support our parks maintenance operation. We have, people relate to this well, I think. We have 20 staff people down there. There isn't room for all of them to have a locker or sit at in the lunchroom at the same time. And there are actually 2 restrooms, 1 women's, 1 men, and they each have 1 toilet apiece. So, and they're just insufficient. They don't have the correct amount of shops to work, to fix their equipment, etc. They have to park their vehicles one at a time, bumper to bumper, to get them inside the fenced area. We have been able to make some headway in offering them more support for their operations, and that was provided, the funding for that was provided out of open space last year, and a vehicle storage building was purchased down at the Public Works shops yard, which is down on 47th and Robb approximately, to park their vehicles in, not have to store their tractors out in the winter time. They can keep them covered now inside that building. So we were able to complete that. Also budgeted out of the open space fund this year for them is another smaller storage area for the smaller equipment. And those two buildings are sitting on an acre of land that we purchased from open space funds several years ago. It was contiguous to the shop yard. So another example of opportunity sometimes takes precedence over something else you might want to do, because it would be difficult to acquire that at a later time, and then we saved our money until we could afford to purchase and, construct those buildings. So that is, those four things are really all part of one piece. The recreation center expansion could stand alone now, but Anderson Park and the Public Works shop really have to happen at the same time. And based on my explanation, I hope it made some sense. Based on the way we budget and how much money we have every year, it's very difficult to ever save up for these type of projects, because we wanted to get the trail done. There was a trail grant opportunity, so you go ahead and spend your matching money on the trail, and it's just hard not to do anything for 5 years at all in the hopes that you can save a few $1,000,000 for a larger project. So this is the slide related to that. So I talked about that. So I have, I tried to put some summary of costs. I didn't know if you'd be interested. They're very, very broad, because it's really hard to know what they'd cost, but I'm guessing the acquisition and development of the Color Strand school site, depending on whether the building stays or goes, is probably around $2 million. We just went through this at the Martinson school site. When they closed that, we did a feasibility study on acquiring Martinson, and I think the asking price from the school district for that site was over $1 million. And then the Clear Creek Trail connections and upgrades, we're really dependent on CDOT. I don't know that we would have to fund any of that, but I'm not sure where that is on CDOT's priority list. And then trailhead and trail replacement, about $600,000. And then Anderson Prospect and the Recreation Center, really Prospect to include the Burbard House is right around $5 million. Could be a little less. Expansion of the rec center, just taking a guess based on when we last looked at that expansion and what it cost at that time. And then Anderson Park and replacing the Anderson building at $20 million. And then the municipal maintenance facility, again, just a broad stroke at $7 million. We know the admin building, where we would combine the public works operations staff with the park staff, offer space for offices, lockers, lunchroom, those kinds of things, was estimated several years ago at around $4 million. So it's really hard now because building costs are very high due to our economy and the state of Denver, Colorado, and the shortage of labor, and et cetera. So very broad strokes. So just based not necessarily on what I think are the priorities, but I think what's feasible to get done or what needs funding are number 8 and number 1. So that's it from me. I'd be happy to answer any questions or expand my comments on any of the items. Or
I had one question. Due to the fact that one of the schools is possibly becoming vacant, and you already use the, you already have the soccer fields, you already maintain back there, wouldn't it be possible to do some of the recreation center expansion, the classrooms, in an already established building, or is that just not something that would ever be feasible for a project like that?
Well, it might be feasible. There might be some discussion or creativity around, instead of replacing the Anderson building, using Color Strand, for that. We did spend a lot of time looking at Martinson, and a lot of those schools have similar footprints and issues with the age of their HVAC and how they can function for recreation programming. So there are some possibilities there. I still think we need something in the Anderson building to support events. Like, they have no place to count money, and they need some kind of indoor space, no place to have an art show. They use a gymnasium right now. So some possibility of doing that. But back to your question, expanding the rec center, what makes a recreation center so successful and so viable is when a parent can come in and have everything in one place, including the day camp. We can keep costs down because we don't have to bus them to a swimming pool. So that expansion was really about the fitness wellness program and a place for our licensed preschool and our licensed day camp, which added another gymnasium. What we found, and I don't know how many of you are in the rec center at specific times or ever, but we now have our spinning class in the gymnasium, and the spinning is amplified and it travels up to the track, and it's not ideal. I mean, we can all share but it isn't ideally what we'd like to offer. And we have large senior classes, silver sneakers on folding chairs in the gymnasium. So every time you use the gymnasium for something that it's not purposed for, then the people that want to shoot baskets aren't in the gymnasium. So really having everything at one place is really part of why our recreation center is successful, as well as financially, successful.
Thank you.
I was wondering about you were mentioning the child care and stuff like that. Is that another fee on top of, or perhaps could it sustain itself by another fee for the people that do have children, to whereas the city or something doesn't have to brunt the whole part of the cost of that?
Well, all of our programs in recreation, except for one or two, one being performances in the park, we charge a fee for. So the idea is that parks and now I'm just talking about recreation services are special use. So we don't all go to the outdoor pool, so it's not free. We all drive on the street, and we all need our police to respond. So those are paid with tax dollars. But recreation services are, what's the word I want to use? By buyer's choice. So we charge for everything that we do. Not to say that it's not subsidized, but it does pay the full cost of the program, plus what we call some overhead. So if we have a licensed preschool program, then there's a fee attached to that. If your child attends day camp, the fee is pretty much market value, the same thing you would pay if you went to a daycare center, a private daycare center. Am I answering your question? And then we offer daycare inside the building, so that if you want to go upstairs and go to yoga or go to Pilates, it's very convenient to take your child in for $2 an hour, and we'll do the babysitting while you have a chance to work out. So that's very popular, and we really support that. It makes it convenient for families and parents, and the kids love it. So.
Anne?
Thank you for the presentation. Just a couple questions around your recommendations on PRT 8. So I have a lot of questions, but so on the back where it gives the recommendations, it specifically says Prospect Park Recreation Center expansion and Anderson Park. So are you then removing the historical parks and the Bauhaus, or?
I am, and I'm sorry if that's confusing. I was just trying to reference the same title as you had.
Okay.
I think.
So those you're recommending those not be part of it? Okay, thank you.
No, we really can't acquire the land right now.
Got it. And then for Anderson Park, is that in the floodplain?
Some of it's in the floodplain, some of it's in the floodway.
Okay,
Some of the good news is that I think they're revising the floodway and floodplain right now, again, based on the flows in Clear Creek. So,
okay. And so that wouldn't impact, if it was prioritized by D.I.R.T, being in the floodway or floodplain wouldn't impact your master plan? You've already...
no, it
considered
doesn't
that?
impact park development. And
Okay.
I mean, most parks are in the floodplains because that's a good use of that land. The Anderson building in that particular park is not in either the floodplain or the floodway.
Okay.
Part of the swimming pool is.
Oh, it is, okay. So also on PRT 8, for the recreation center expansion, is there any property acquisition as part of that? Or is it all going to be on the footprint or the land print that's there
It
now
would all need to be on the footprint. There is no land available.
anymore? Okay, okay. And then you mentioned grants, that you go for different grants like GoCo, et cetera. Are most of those matching? We heard that.
Yes.
Yeah, they are
They're all
matching.
matching.
Okay, and they vary in the percentage of matching?
Well, they really average around 30%
Okay,
at a minimum. Sometimes Jeffco Open Space, they'll offer an enhanced grant if you can meet some of their criteria that also meets their open space or their master plan and their open space goals. We just did that with the Clear Creek Trail, and that's one of the ways that you can really leverage money, is find out what their interest is, which is still very much open space versus, applying for a grant for a new outdoor pool slide.
okay,
Way rather fund a trail.
okay.
And that is a regional trail, so you can actually get additional funding because Clear Creek is a regional trail.
Okay, thank you. And then on the municipal maintenance facility, the concept of combining yours and Public Works, is that footprint of the maintenance facility big enough to handle both departments?
Yes, we did a master plan several years ago. We did acquire the acre and a quarter to the north.
Okay.
Otherwise, it wouldn't be possible.
Okay,
And then we also have a storage lot on the north end of Van Gordon Street, down by the Greenbelt, by Tabor Lake, that we keep loose materials on.
okay,
So it doesn't do everything we need it to do, but it would certainly help a lot.
so if that one were prioritized by D.I.R.T, that current building right on the corner of Anderson Park, what used to be the teen center and was a 7-Eleven or whatever, would the city keep that, or would they sell it if you're moving?
We wouldn't sell it because it's on parkland and
Oh.
it's at the entrance to the park.
Okay,
So whether to demolish a building is always a very, what do I want to say? There are a lot of differing opinions on the values of building.
but it's on park land, so that's
But it
why.
is on parkland,
Okay.
and, we would want to improve the entrance to the park. It also has quite a few issues from a structural standpoint, so.
That's where you, bless you, that's where most recently you guys collected the tree branches and everything from the
That's correct.
last storm, right? Okay,
And if you had a chance to look at the parking lots.
yeah, that's a mess.
I didn't really address the parking lots in our parks, but we could spend all our money repairing and crack sealing the parking lots.
Okay, and I think that's it. You already answered my question on what was CDOT's priority on the bridge at Kipling, and since you don't know, you can't really recommend prioritization of that until
Right.
CDOT is kind of
And the
driving.
reason, I feel like we can continue to plug away at the Clear Creek Trail, but that bridge is something we really need it, and we're really dependent on it. We'd also, pedestrians, we didn't finish our new trail on the west side. We didn't make a connection over to that bridge because it's not ADA accessible, and it's only like a little, 3-foot sidewalk. We don't really want to drive people across to walk across it, but they do anyway. So that bridge replacement, would also serve Kipling, not just under the trail. It would serve pedestrians on Kipling.
I have to tell you, I'm guilty of crossing. I don't go under Kipling. I cross right there. So it's point A to point B.
It's scary.
It is what it is. Okay, thank you so much.
Are there any more questions for Joyce? Yeah.
I'm sorry, I have just one more. Apologies. So last time we worked on the rec center, we went to the citizens and asked them for a tax increase to fund it that sundowned after we were done, and if I recall, we paid for it pretty quickly. Would that be, is that in the quiver of options there that you have, or are you just trying to fund it through the CIP?
Well, I don't think it's possible to find it through the CIP.
Right.
So I think whatever city council, I think it's certainly probably one of the alternative ways to fund. And I know this community, you know, it's nice to say you can sunset it. You're not going to have a tax in perpetuity. I can tell you that the Apex Center was opened about a year after our center, and they just paid the Apex Center bonds off. But they also went to the voters and said, would you mind if we just kept
it running.
going? And now they have several really nice projects they're doing from the east end of Arvada all the way over to the west.
Okay.
So that's the way they managed that. They never did pay it off, and now, great for them, their voters are going, oh yeah, well, I guess we hadn't noticed so much. It's not new. We're already paying it. So, and there's all different kinds of ways to approach that depending on council's sensibilities and what they'd like to fund.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
So I to understand that Prospect Park is partially funded now?
It is partially funded.
And, okay, so it's going to move on in phases,
Right now, yes.
basically, right, no matter what. And you consider Anderson Park much more in need than, Prospect will go on, Anderson Park needs help, in other words.
Yes, we don't have any funding for Anderson Park, so if we continue on with Prospect, we're probably, you know, looking at 10 to 15 years before we can get to Anderson.
Okay, thank you.
It's my understanding that the recreation center has been paid off and the sunset for the tax is finished, correct?
That's correct. It's been paid off for years and years. Yeah.
Just to clarify for
Yeah,
my understanding. Thank you.
It's all done.
Any more questions for Joyce?
I have another little.
Okay.
Okay, with the funding of the parks and stuff and bringing money into the city and the Tabor hookup to the light rail system, and have you guys looked at or thought about, is that going to impact the use of the park with the light rail and people with bicycles and so on and so forth? Is that?
At Prospect?
And bringing.
I'm sure it will. Yeah.
So you believe that would bring economic growth into the city? And
I believe, and of course our community development department is much more schooled in this, but you know, that planning area is slated for higher density. It will have some kind of park in that area, more urban in nature. But we really consider Prospect Park a jewel. I mean, the whole Greenbelt's so special. It's not an urban plaza, concrete park. It's, you know, a place to really get away and be in a natural area between the south and the north side. So there aren't a lot of great connections right now, but Tabor Street's pretty close. You know, you can come straight down Tabor and be able to access Prospect Park that way.
My question has to do with the cost of this PTR number 8 ballpark, $35 million. I'm pretty sure it's the largest single fee that's going to be on our list that we'll consider. Is there any way that you could break these up? I mean, you know, I know you're grouping them together, but is it feasible to use some other fields or move some stuff around? That I know you said you didn't want to piecemeal it, but just $35 million is a big chunk, and I don't know, it's just a big chunk to consider.
It is a big chunk, and I'm taking pretty big stabs at the cost. But I think if I was going to break it up, I would take Anderson Park and the Parks Maintenance Facility are really the two that have to go together. The Recreation Center expansion, can be broken out of that. Is that part of your figuring? I was trying to get to that sheet or
Yeah, you answered the question.
okay, thank you. All right.
Joyce, you did say that the Recreation Center and Prospect Park were linked, correct? Because the soccer fields?
Well, when we expand the recreation center, we need to figure out where to put the soccer field that's there right now. And it isn't going to go at Prospect Park.
Okay.
So,
Does that answer everyone's questions?
hey, thank you.
Again, if they went before the voters to put a slight tax to, like we did for the recreation center before, that is an option, you said, correct?
It's an option to sunset, or it's an
An option to have the voter, go before the voters and ask for the money for the rec center, like we did before, I believe.
absolutely. Yeah, that's an option.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joyce. And now that is Heather.
Okay, good evening. I'm Heather Geyer. I'm the Administrative Services Director here at the City of Wheat Ridge for the benefit of the viewers at home. I'm going to discuss this evening the facility needs related to City Hall, which is the facility that you're in. This facility was ranked as a priority number 26 in 2007 when the D.I.R.T Task Force prioritized those projects. A couple of things to keep in mind as I present some information to you tonight, and it's going to be pretty high level. There's quite a bit of work that would need to be done to really determine what the appropriate cost estimate for replacement, or depending on, I'll show you some options that have been discussed in the past, but depending on which path the council decided to go down, there would need to be work done to determine what the appropriate costs are. But I think given what you've heard from Joyce tonight in terms of the spectrum of facility costs, I mean, we're looking at several $1 million to replace this facility or do certain types of enhancements. So from a building perspective, using audit guidelines, when you get into depreciation of assets, capital fixed assets, we estimate a useful life for a building of this type to be between 10 to 40 years. City Hall was constructed back in 1977. We have a police department addition which was constructed in 1996. There's approximately 159 plus employees who work out of this facility, including police. That doesn't mean that all of those employees are in this facility at one time. You know, there's certainly a flow in terms of utilization of the workspace that we have. We did have a space needs analysis conducted in 2008, which I'll share some of those conclusions. Overall, this space consists of about 35,000 square feet. We often refer to the police department side, which is east of where we're at. The administration, the community development, and public works area. So the administration area is on the first floor to the north, and then where we were at in the conference room last week, just to the west of where we were at, that's the community development and public works area, not including the public works operations area, which Joyce referenced in terms of the need to improve the parks and the Public Works operations facility. And then we have courts, council chambers, and the courtroom. So the courts is just east of where we're at. The courtroom immediately adjacent to us, this is considered the council chambers. And Carly has pulled together several pictures so we can provide you with more visual examples of some of these challenges that we've outlined for you this evening. So we do have space deficiency. We have grown over the years based on level of service demands. And so that's one of the things that we have not been able to do is really align our space needs with the level of service demands based on council direction and community desires. We have inadequate meeting space. You experienced that firsthand with being moved up to the second floor conference room last week. We have inadequate police locker rooms, and we do have pictures of what those locker rooms look like. We have inadequate employee lunchrooms, breastfeeding rooms. This is something that I put in here in particular because it's required by state law, but we don't have areas where employees can have privacy, whether there's nursing mothers, or an employee who works in a very common area needs to make a private phone call, things of those along those lines. We have increasing annual maintenance costs. You know, you often hear the reference of putting lipstick on a pig. Our costs continue to increase. You have significant needs in terms of this year. I believe we are replacing the roof on the court side of this facility, but there's other significant capital needs. And given the budget constraints that we do have that Patrick touched on in his presentation, there's a balancing act. So staff may come forward with a list of 5 or 10 capital needs that need to be addressed in this facility on an annual basis, but maybe 1 or 2 can get accomplished based on the available revenue that we have in a given year. And those needs are always balanced against the larger needs within the city budget, so that's something to keep in mind. Lack of energy efficiency, we have single pane windows. Most offices, including mine, requires a space heater, so you don't stay chilled during the winter months or anytime there's a shift in temperature and then the AC kicks on. There's challenges with that, and it's not just because I tend to be a cold person temperature-wise. So that's something that we find throughout the building. And one of the best practices that you see in local government today is a move towards being more environmentally minded and focusing on sustainability efforts. And those best practices and making improvements to facilities come with a cost. And that's a very difficult position that we're in. We're not able to achieve some of those things because we don't have the funding to do that. However, we have done things, and Joyce could speak to that a little bit better than I can, just based on when we're able to do it, we'll do it in terms of lighting and things of that nature. There's a lack of space to grow based on the needs of the organization, as I alluded to earlier. Carly has some pictures in here, and I can point out some specifics in terms of where we've created office space out of a larger office that maybe we've consolidated into 2 office spaces. We've created office spaces out of what used to be a closet or more. I do have a couple employees that are housed in office spaces where the electrical inputs are on the wall, which is not ideal. So, there's not real specific standards in terms of if you were to walk around our building based on where you fall within the hierarchy of the organization, you get X office space or you have X cubicle space. It's really, we've done the best that we can with what we have, and we'll continue to do that until we have the available funding to pursue some of these options. So in the 2008 space analysis study, these were 3 conclusions that were provided to us, and no real action's been taken on this. Again, these were conclusions, and no action's been taken because we don't have available funding to really pursue these options. To leave the police and courts in this existing city hall facility and remodel it to accommodate their functions and use, and that's based on their size and their uses that they could utilize this entire facility. Move everyone out of the existing building into a new facility, liquidate or reuse the existing facility, and then remodel or reconfigure the existing building in order to meet current current shortfalls in terms of space until a long-term solution is feasible. Some of the things that had been discussed in the past and presented to the 2007 D.I.R.T task force included expanding this building, as noted above, and this could potentially require conversion of park property into city hall use. And then relocate City Hall to a new town center. That's been discussed and included in some planning efforts, but nothing's really moved forward on that front. And then the leasing of additional off-site space. And, beyond the cost of leasing a space, there's some additional challenges that come with that in terms of the actual infrastructure from an IT perspective. And so for the cost, we're not providing a specific cost. I believe in 2007, a cost of about $3 million plus had been presented to the D.I.R.T task force. I think, again, to my earlier point, we would really need to have more of a specific direction and pursue what those types of, what would be involved and really get a better handle on what costs would look like. But definitely millions of dollars. So with that, I'm going to have Carly pull up some pictures of the City Hall facility, and we can kind of give you a visual tour. And then Joyce, do you have anything to add based on your familiarity with the building?
I would just say this is true both City Hall and the Parks Operations Shop. I can't really speak to Public Works, but one of the real needs is our supervisors work in areas without doors, in office spaces that don't have doors. And it's really, they need some privacy to supervise employees and have discussions, and we're just not able, we don't have the square footage to provide that. So that's another function that's kind of lacking in this department. I think Carly also has some pictures of the maintenance shop I'd like to see. It's up to you. Why don't you go ahead with City Hall, since you're...
So this particular office space is for one of my HR business partners, and this is half of what used to be a larger office space, which years ago, even before that was a larger office space, used to be, I believe, a conference room of some sort and a copy room at some point. This is part of a hallway that ties into our main copy area here at City Hall. So this is a storage area where we stack our paper supply and other materials for all staff usage. This is the main copy room. So we have we have shared copiers, which is an environmentally friendly thing to do, so we can help manage the amount of paper that we utilize. And so that's a main copy machine that we have. And then we have our mail machine. This is our employee lunchroom for City Hall on the city side. You can see we have a refrigerator, a couple vending machines, a couple microwaves, and a sink. This is, you saw a picture of Nina's office, the HR business partner earlier. This is the other half, the other HR business partner's office, Barb's office. This is Kathy's office, my sales tax supervisor, and do you have a picture of? So you can see where anytime a breaker flips in a certain area on the admin floor, Mike Farrell, our facility supervisor, or some of the staff members know which breakers to flip back and forth. You go into Kathy's office to do that. This is our first floor conference room, also known as our lobby conference room. We've made some improvements to it over the years in terms of cosmetic changes. It's a highly used conference room, and this is an example of, a space that we could probably utilize 2 to 3 more of them in this facility to really keep up with the demand of what we have in terms of staff meetings and external meetings. This is a cubicle space, and if you look down below, you can see the recycle bin to the right, but then there's a space heater. It might be hard for you guys to see that, but typically most of my, will you move the mouse? Most of the staff members in City Hall utilize space heaters in some way, shape, or form. That's a drain on energy in terms of electricity, and sometimes they kick the breakers, and but we try to keep staff as comfortable as possible. This is up in the on the public works side in the engineering area. You can see how those are major plotter printers, and we've made some adjustments to space over time. This is a great example. This is my IT manager's office, Mike Steinke, who is over to the right there, and then he's got 2 staff members in his office. The staff member in the front of the picture is James. He's my website editor / help desk technician. They have shared an office for several years, and that creates challenges because Mike's a supervisor, and there's certain discussions and conversations and things that he has to be able to utilize conference room space for, which is at a minimum. So that's not an ideal situation, nor is this situation where this is actually the server room, but that space that you see there is for Will. He is an IT, a senior support technician for IT, and so he sits in this room where we have no windows, and he gets to hear the white noise from the servers all day long. And we've done some things with the HVAC system to try to minimize that impact to him, but the noise piece is something that's very difficult to change, given that we've got to have the servers housed somewhere. This is our crime lab evidence intake area. This is that was an investigations and interview room. There have been some improvements on the PD side where we've been able to update some rooms, and when we do that, we update electrical and anything else that would make sense to update. This is the roll call room, so you can see towards the back that there's some computers where officers come in to work on reports when they're starting their shift or getting off of their shift. And then this is the space that we have for roll call, the beginning of a shift. This is the on the second floor of this facility. On the police department side, if you go back to that, Carly, you can see where there's several officers, sergeants that are piled into this workspace area. Sometimes officers have to share workspaces, sergeants do, depending on the shifts and the workflow. This is an example of how tight the quarters can be. That's within the community services unit on the second floor. This is our PD training room. This is a room that's heavily utilized by internal staff, sometimes often the room if you're involved in the Citizens Police Academy or other community groups, you may have been in that room. This is the police department lunchroom, which is a very small space with a couple vending machines. This is women's bathroom, I believe. This is our crime prevention team area. If you go back one picture, this is where I have an IT staff member is housed in this location because, again, if you think back to the picture of my IT manager's office, I don't have a specific IT area here in City Hall, so I've got staff members spread all throughout the facility. That's a closet space. We do have a basement area that's pretty well managed, but just having space to store things is at a minimum as well. That looks like that's locker room. So there have been some improvements made to the types of lockers, but there's one shower in this locker room for officers to change in, and you can see where there's a lot of personal clothing items around, and just not a very good space. This is the hallway. The door on the left is our dispatch 911 center, and then that's the hallway back to the door where, is this the door where prisoners, individuals who are arrested are brought in and out of the facility? And Chief Dan Brennan could speak more specifically to what the ideal situation in terms of building security and intake areas look like. So you can see the outside of the building there. In the past, the police department has asked for the ability to fence off and create a secured parking lot area, which would enhance safety of officers when they're bringing prisoners in to the City Hall area, as well as because we're a 24/7 operation, you have officers coming in and out of the parking lot at all hours of the day and night, and so having a more secured area would enhance officer safety, especially when they're dealing with individuals who are disruptive or could potentially pose a threat to an officer's safety. This is our lobby area, and again, we've made some cosmetic improvements to the lobby area over the years. Joyce, do you have anything to add based on? Okay. Okay. Do you want to do this one?
So this is the north building of the Parks Maintenance Shop on the west side of Anderson Park. So if you're at the outdoor swimming pool, you can look across to the west, and this is the building you will see. There's two buildings actually back there. That's the west building, and then there was the north building. This is their lunchroom. This is one of the, I have to think which office this is, one of the supervisor's offices. Our two restrooms that I mentioned for our 19 employees. This is another supervisor's, can't keep up with Carly. This is another supervisor office, and then the door with the notice on it goes to the outside parking lot. Must be our water heater. Again, lunchroom. That's one of our bay areas that we work out of. We keep parts, etc., in, some small equipment. We have a total of 3 bays. Let me get oriented here for a minute. So that's looking south to our yard. The building on the right is the one you just saw the interior pictures of. So that's the fenced area I was talking about, where they have a system about which vehicle goes in which space in order to get them all behind the fence to lock the gate at night. That's their equipment shop. Yes, city vehicles and equipment. The maintenance staff, they actually park in the Anderson building, or the parking lot just north of the Anderson building is where they park, and then they walk behind the Anderson building over to the shops. So they walk down the north side of the Anderson building. This is the public works shops down on 47th and about Robb. the area we're talking about combining or moving the parks maintenance shop to. There's some efficiencies for them in terms of communication and joint use of equipment and fleet maintenance. Would also be a benefit to combining their spaces. Interior office. They also have a sign shop down there where they make signs. I believe that's the sign shop. Their lunchroom, I'm not sure how many employees they have in their department total that are down there. Maybe 10. Okay, their locker rooms. And you would go north off of 44th on. Well, on the park shop, they go south on Garrison from 44th, and then they take a small drive in, or not a small drive, a private drive into that area. Back in 1979, they drove in front of the Anderson building across an asphalt drive over to their shops before the swimming pool was built. That park has changed actually quite a bit. So this is the mechanic area for Public Works. One of their storage buildings for their equipment, covered storage, and then the building to the right is the new parks vehicle storage building that we just finished building last year that I was telling you about on the new 1.25 acres that we purchased. Those are our gas pumps at the Public Works area. So all of our police department, everybody goes down, to fuel at that location. That's our sand and salt barn. We don't really have any. What is it that we don't have, sand or salt anymore? But anyway, that's a storage building for those materials. So as I mentioned, we did have a consultant hired many years ago to take all of our needs, and we created a master plan to combine the Public Works and Parks shops. So we want to work towards that, but we just haven't had any funding. But that's how we know it all fits and all the needs have been addressed. It does need to be updated a little bit, but it's still pretty viable. We also have our police evidence storage building on this site as well. We've added it in recent years. Okay, thank you.
One question. So this relates to the ranking 21 PW number 1 municipal maintenance facility. So in other words, you'd be able to consolidate some of your buildings and the function of some of those buildings under one fully renovated new maintenance facility.
Correct, one site. They would both be at one site, and that's at the current Public Works shops area, which was the second set of pictures. Mm-hmm. But the master plan relocates many of the buildings, the traffic patterns and flows, as well as a new administration building where both of them would be housed together, one lunchroom, so some economies of scale there, and then the side benefits are, of course, better communication. They do work together. They do share equipment. All of our police department, as well as parks, takes our vehicles to that area for servicing.
It's a big order to get that all in operation or implementation. Is there some sort of contingency plan to at least take some of the pressure off some of those smaller buildings or the function that's going on in those smaller buildings?
Well, the contingency plan is to use open space funds, which is a legitimate use of those funds because it supports parks maintenance. So we used open space funds to purchase the 1.25 acres. So we're piecing and plugging away at it. And then we built the vehicle storage building last year. That was an $800,000 building. That was also came out of open space funds. And then we're building the smaller building. So that's how I can't do much for public works because we can't spend open space funds on public works functions. But it has to support parks and recreation by law. So it is considered a special revenue source. If we support, and I have no issue with supporting maintenance functions because we need them to take care of the parks, but it just means then we don't have that money to renovate Anderson Park. It's a balance. But we're at a point where to me, it's a real priority for those folks and those employees to have an environment that supports their operations. But that's our contingency plan, one building a year at a time. And I don't think it's feasible to get to the combined admin building because back when we did the master plan, trying to think how many years ago that was, probably 10 years ago, they had a estimated $4 million price tag on that. So it's just very difficult to really know how much, construction's going to cost. What we're experiencing right now is whether it's construction, we're not doing as much of that, and I'm not speaking to public works, street construction, but anything we're doing in parks, we're receiving one bid or no bid. So we're really out looking for contractors or even vendors to bid on our items. They seem to be busy. So.
Is there any way you could give some map of what you intend to do with Anderson? I've been to Anderson Park probably 1,000 times in my life. I can't picture these buildings you're talking about. And if you're going to replace them, where are they going to go? And then where would the new soccer field go? I mean, there's only so much space. I can't picture what it is that you want to get done and where it'll all fit.
I could do that. It certainly wouldn't be professionally done, but just if I could take a minute, when you drive into Anderson Park, there's only one way to get in there. There's a tan building on the right.
Very small building.
Yes, that's what the Parks, Forestry, and Open Space office. So that building would go away, and it would be replaced with an admin building at the Public Works shop. So that would open up the entrance to the park, and we would have that land available. And then if you do go swimming?
Yes.
So if you're in the swimming pool and you look due west through that chain link fence, those are the buildings we're showing you. They're beige with a white roof, and they're metal buildings. And then there's yeah. I mean, I'm sure. I can appreciate that. So really, the Anderson Park is really very large when you add those sites into there. I think they're busy. I think there's not enough people out there to do the work, and they're just busy.
I think you're right on that. Right now, there's major expansion in Denver, and there's going to be Denver Water is expanding in big time. In fact, the biggest project they're going to have leave out latter part of this year up in Ralston. So I think you're going to see that for the next 2 or 3 years, to be honest with you. But I think you're seeing it throughout the whole country, to be quite frank. But here particularly.
Yeah. So, for example, when we built Discovery Park in 2003, 2004, by the time we got ready to build it, we got very fortunate because the economy was really down and people were looking for work. So you get many bids and they're low. They're really competitive. And we were able to get a lot done in that park for less money than we had imagined. But we're not in that time right now. So, the housing market was down and those folks were looking for work, and now they're not. So that's part of it too. Okay. Yeah, I'll try to drive. So this is our baseball field, and it's used mostly for the men's Metro Senior League. It used to be a high school baseball field, but they now have their own field at Everett, and they don't use it as much. So this is a lot of land, and it's very high maintenance. So That's would be one of the recommendations is that we don't support the baseball program, men's baseball league. It's hard to say those kinds of things because I know that there are people that play baseball or you might be in the men's baseball league, but we receive about $8,000 a year in revenue, and it's a high maintenance area, and the lights are, they're at the end of their lifespan, and to relight a field like that's over $100,000. So it's not going to be a staff recommendation to invest back into that field based on the usage that we're seeing. Well, they're very old, and the poles. Light. Yep. Right. So here's what goes on now. We can't climb the poles anymore. We're getting concerned about the poles, and so we have to get a lift, of course. And now we have 2 fixtures out, and all the fixtures have to be rewired if they're going to be repaired. So, that's that balance of sustaining the maintenance, reinvesting, and what's the value to the community if we decide to do that. So, like I really did pick the wrong thing to pick on, but that's a lot of space right there. We use this to park on. It's not a bluegrass field and it's not irrigated. I get a lot of requests to park on the grass. I'm really protective of the turf that's irrigated, having car shows on it. Events like that. So we would try to create a space that would accommodate that. We just had the 44th Avenue Rumble. They did get rained out, but they were in this space and this space. I'm sorry, here's the swimming pool space. So while you have that kind of thing going on, you either shut the pool down so they can park, or you have enough for all your residents, and you do a juggling act with the other things that are going on. So we've renovated our outdoor pool about 8-9 years ago, divided it into play pool and lap pool. We just recently resurfaced both pools and added a new water toy, took out an old one and refurbished the toys. So that's our outdoor pool and locker room. This locker room really needs to be replaced. I didn't really mention that as part of the A building, but we recently switched the men's and women's side so we could accommodate ADA accessibility and numbers of stalls, etc. Because once you touch something, you have to fix it. So if you start restoring or renovating a building, you need to make it compliant by law, and you should make it compliant, but sometimes it's difficult. So here's that building as you enter the park. That's our Parks Forestry office. It has been many different bars and restaurants prior to our purchasing it, but we were able to purchase it. And this is another parking lot that they use and our employees park in. So here's the Anderson building, about 8,000 square feet, gymnasium, small office area, and a fitness room. So this was our only recreation center until we opened the one on Kipling. So we're really happy to have the one on Kipling, but we do still use this on a regular basis. It gives us an extra gym. It has gone past its lifespan. It's a metal building with about a 30-year lifespan. We really can't fix the roof anymore. It leaks. We've tried many times. And it's what it is. It is what it is. But it's, yeah. Yeah. So, we would like to replace it. And we'd like to have adequate bathrooms, to support whatever's going on in the park. Let's see. Here's the storage building that you saw the pictures of that were on the north, and here's the west building that you saw the interior of. So these are our 2 parks maintenance shops that we use. Offices in here, equipment maintenance in here, and we have a couple storage bays and work areas. And then this is our fenced yard where we park our vehicles. So this is we have 2 full-size soccer fields. This is one of them, and the other one is at the recreation center. So one of the challenges with managing fields is having enough fields, if you're fortunate, to alternate play on them or give one a rest while the other one's being used. And we don't really have that luxury, but we are able to to do that a little more than we used to do, but that's a full-size soccer field. The reason it doesn't work for an event space is they'd like to put a wood dance floor on it. They'd like to stake tents in there. They had the Zope Circus on there during the Carnation Festival one year. And we did manage to bring the turf back, but you can imagine there was a big brown spot here when soccer started. And it's probably doable, but it's not, it doesn't really serve either needs very well. They did move the Zope Circus down here, and that worked out a little bit better. And then south down here is our shelter pavilion, heavily used, really nice spot, restful, peaceful, next to the trail, which is even further south. So the Clear Creek Trail, here's Clear Creek, and here's the trail that runs along the perimeter of Anderson Park. That's it. Okay. Well, thank you for letting me do that. That was fun. That was fun. I enjoyed showing
Joyce,
that.
while you've got the maps up, can you scoot over to the proposed site that you want to move the maintenance to?
Okay, let me see. Does anybody see a cross street? What's that say? Am I Kipling yet?
You just missed it.
Rob is
Oh, right here. Right here. So here's the 1.25 acres we purchased with the Open Space Fund. Thanks to our past Public Works Director, he spent a lot of time negotiating with these folks to carve out this piece of land. That's our new vehicle storage building that we just finished that I mentioned was about $800,000. We're adding a smaller storage building here. So we have a master plan that maps all of this out. This is the sand and salt barn. This is their admin building, Public Works. And these are large, where they park their large equipment indoors, like some of the sweepers and et cetera, I think are in this building. These are the gas fuel canopy area. And it would all go on this property. So I think the admin building is slated for here. All of these move, and it has a traffic pattern that kind of flows through here. I can't tell you exactly where each individual building would go. There's some that wouldn't move, like the evidence building is fairly new, so it was strategically placed, so we weren't, replacing it in the future. The barn, I would need Scott here to say whether the salt barn would move. I would guess it would not. But where each one of these go and would be replaced is on the master plan. We could certainly get you a copy of that if you'd like to see it. It's tight, but there is room, yeah. One of the other areas we operate on, I don't know if I can see it, if I find Tabor Lake. Would our plan be obsolete?
Well, if you were to put the maintenance facility together and combine it and everything on that land, you're saying it would be tight. My question is, would it be so tight that if you were to move forward with that, would it be so tight that in 10 years or something that it would be obsolete?
I don't think so, because our city's landlocked and our population hasn't changed, but a couple thousand people in 30, 40 years. Now, whether, the demand for services changes and we do more is a question I can't answer, but we have X amount of miles of streets. And so I don't see it really as being obsolete. Needs change, and we can't always predict them. So like when City Hall was built as an example in 1978, and we moved in here, and it was very spacious. When they moved in, there was no need for an IT department because we didn't have computers. So now they need more room than we can even provide them, and the space has to be air conditioned to keep the servers cool, and it's just not something you can always predict. But I would say for what Parks does and Public Works does, and the fact that we're landlocked and we feel like we have met our neighborhood park demands, so we're not developing any new parks, we wouldn't expect a lot of growth. Where that growth might occur is if we decided we were going to do right-of-way maintenance instead of contracted. Then you start talking about adding employees and vehicles. But we're very strategic about adding things that we can't sustain over a long period of time with our tax base. So I think you have to make good decisions in terms of what you can sustain. But I think it's entirely feasible to create something to support what we operate now that'll last us into the future. I mean, the space is tight. Yeah, you're right. It's a tight fit, and we absolutely couldn't have done it without the purchase of that 1.25 acres. And just to make my point, I was going to show you another spot we have down here. This is our storage area. We keep a lot of rock there. So yeah, wouldn't it be nice if we could have everything in one place? But we can't. So we have loose piles of large granite, crusher fines, other things that we have to store sometimes before we go to the dump. We own that too. So no, it wouldn't be moved over there. And some of that has to do with code and what's allowed on the site. But yeah, we'd keep it over here. So it's not the largest inefficiency, it's just another example of how our operations are spread out.
Thank you, Joyce.
Thank you.
That definitely gave a clearer picture, seeing it on Google Maps. Just very quickly, we do have time still to see the virtual tour by Charles, and I would like to move on to that if we can.
That's fine. We have to talk about asset management too.
Sorry?
Asset management.
I would like to talk about that, but would you like to move on to the virtual tour first?
I agree.
Okay. I'd like to just see that first. I have some questions I want to ask Heather. This might run a little longer than 9 o'clock.
Well, I'm sure it is.
If we don't get the tour on first. Okay.
Thank you. Charlie Myers, resident of District 1. And last meeting, a lot of us weren't clear on certain sites and that sort of thing, so I offered to take some photos, and Ruth, I think you suggested, well, how about video instead of photos? And Terry, I think you suggested, well, why don't you get a helmet cam or something? And so I do have some of the on Tabor via a helmet cam, but maybe I should pass out Dramamine because it's not too professionally done. So, but okay. So this is what, as far as what this refers to, is one of the new projects, Gold Line Station area. We were talking about that. And some of us weren't aware of Tabor and how it fed into Ridge Road. So here's a map, but Mike, we could also go to Google Maps or do the satellite in a minute. But and so we're coming up Tabor, up to Ridge Road, and there's a little clearer or closer picture. What's strange, do you notice our boundaries, Arvada and Wheat Ridge? And there's a chunk of Ridge Road that is actually Arvada's right there. So I'm sure Scott will work with Arvada. Yeah. Okay. So here we go. Let's see. How do you... Here we go. It's moving a little slower than I thought I did, but we'll see what happens here. This is a rather challenging intersection. Scott had talked about bicycle facilities along Tabor. And this is from I-70 frontage road north. And we're heading north on Tabor now. And curb and gutter all looks very good. And that's the sidewalk. And now here we're, frontage road goes off to the left. We're taking a right back onto Tabor. And on to the next one. And again, the street looks pretty good for what Scott was talking about, putting bike lanes in or sidewalks. And I didn't realize it, but there's already construction going on in this section of Tabor. We're very close to Ridge Road and the station. And yeah, road was closed, but you can go various places on a bike. So, although I needed a mountain bike on this one. Yeah, there you go. I should have mentioned that. But yeah, they've already started the sidewalk here and curb. From what I could tell, yes, and wide. And so it's going to be ready to go, but we'll see when that is. And then now I'm coming up to Ridge Road, and I'm going to detour right on into a sidewalk and then take you over to the actual train station that's really coming along, as you'll see. And that's the sidewalk into the Wheat Ridge Ward train station. I'll have to save it. Yeah, prime area for development. But it's looking pretty good. They've done a great job with it. And there's even some art construction or installation that's already gone in, or partially. And so that's that. And then the other thing I wanted to, Scott had mentioned that he wanted to carry on what Arvada's been able to do on Ridge Road. And this is looking west towards the Wheat Ridge Station. But it stops at Miller. And then what carries on from there, or doesn't carry on rather, is our section. And of course we have potholes, and we have all the space for what Arvada did, but it's just definitely an abrupt difference, change. And as you said, Ann, prime real estate for development. I mean, there's already various activities, construction activities going in right now. So, thanks a lot. And
Thank you, Charles. That video was not that bad. Going back to IT very quickly, after seeing Charles, that really did help clarify some of the stuff we talked about last time. But going back to IT, looking at their, not just IT, but just the city hall stuff, looking at their space, that looks like what a campaign, when a campaign comes into certain cities, like the Senate races, they go in and they rent a space and then they cram as much people as they can in the limited space to save on costs. But those are temporary. And this is what people are working in already, and that just, it looks very cramped.
So Heather's not going to like me saying this. So I worked in the corporate life for 20-some years, and everybody had huge cubes. And now everything's going to a European style, which is small. And I'm talking less than 4 feet with no walls or very low walls so that it builds on the communal, and then you have to put in white noise to lower the noise. So when I saw the cube size, I'm like, oh, those are pretty big. I mean, times are changing, but there's also a difference between corporate life and supporting a city and having all the paperwork, et cetera, to do that. So it's a balancing act. I will tell you, this is not the first time I've seen pictures and City Hall's been requested. I will also tell you there will probably be some citizen pushback. Citizens don't understand that there was no IT back when, and they don't understand that you have all these support services that weren't there before. But when you balance it on top of everything else out there, I think you're going to have a hard sell on some of this.
As with everything, there's always citizen pushback. You can have a candy shop, and there will be people who don't want a candy shop. It doesn't matter if it's good for the majority or good for a minority. There's pushback from everything. But looking at what they're working with, I wouldn't want to work in that environment, even with the different changes in corporate environment. This is not particularly a corporate environment. There are too many departments happening in one building.
You have a good point. You have a good point that it's going to be hard to recruit, especially in the police department, especially in some of the professional services. You're going to have a hard time taking him up to the offices and showing him the grandeur that is Wheat Ridge city offices. So that is a good point on recruitment.
Come work with us. You have elbow space, and you will know your neighbor very well. Not always a good sell point for office life, especially if you're, I don't know. I mean, to me, it doesn't seem that IT seems efficient the way it is, but Heather, is IT particularly, is it at its most efficient it could be, being spread out everywhere without having their own dedicated workspace?
No, but in responding to your question, I mean, I think that's why we need to have a comprehensive look at and really a sense of direction of, do we utilize this facility building on the 2008 space analysis? Do we look at a new facility? Because IT is not the only need, right? There's other needs within the facility that I tried to give you a high level snapshot of. The one thing I didn't mention to you all that I think is important for you to have in the backs of your minds is the world has changed significantly over the past 5 years, especially from a building security and threat perspective. And so one of the things that we're currently working on that we'll incorporate in the budget as appropriate and as we can afford it is making enhancements to our facility for the protection of our staff and for our customers. We have a very open facility, and there's pros and cons to having the facility open the way it is, but the world has changed. And so there's steps that we're doing an assessment, beginning an assessment on each city facility, and we're going to be looking at what can we do in terms of physical improvements to create a more secure, safe work environment given the potential threats that exist. So just something to keep in the back of your mind. Are you okay with me to go ahead and with asset management? Okay, so I'll try to be brief with both of these because I think I gave you quite a bit of information at last week's meeting, but I'll provide you with a little bit more. So asset management is the system that Scott introduced you to, and this is our cartograph system. So currently we use cartograph software, and I think I may have misspelled cartograph. The A in the middle is supposed to be an E, so my apologies. We purchased this software in 2007 for $160,000. We spend about $45,000 to maintain the licensing and maintenance for the software on an annual basis. We are looking at an upgrade. It is a lot of money. It is a lot of money. And the function that it serves, again, is it's a work order system. And I'll show you more of the functionality here in a minute in terms of the specific things that we use it for. We are in a position now where Cartograph is saying that we need to upgrade this system. So because the upgrade is estimated at $160,000 to $200,000, there's a few steps you have to take in terms of looking at that type of software upgrade. We did an RFI, which is a request for information, in 2015. And that was to really get a feel for what type of software is out there in the market, and for staff to have a discussion internally. Okay, what do we need? How are we using Cartograph currently? What other additional functionality do we need? Does Cartograph provide that, in terms of, we don't just say, okay, we're with Cartograph, we're going to stay with Cartograph. So there's a whole purchasing process that's we're currently in the midst of. We're going to be issuing a request for proposals in the fourth quarter of this year. We do not currently have this project funded. We're hoping to budget for it in 2017. That could change between now and the budget process, depending on what budget priorities look like for 2017. My IT manager has indicated that we could hold off on the replacement upgrade of this system for another year. But what happens is you get to a point where the software company says, we're no longer going to support this software. And so then you end up spending considerable dollars to try to patch and fix it yourselves. So that's the asset management software known as Cartograph. And Scott touched on this a little bit last week. These are the different aspects of it. Sign view is a function where we track an inventory of our stop signs, different types of signage that we have in the city. Storm view is for our stormwater management program. We have work order service requests that come through. So if you send us a service request via the website, or if you call one of your council members, the council member will contact Janice in the office of the mayor and council, and then she'll contact the appropriate department director or key staff person in that department, and those service requests get logged into Cartograph. There's a fleet management component to this system, a GIS director that's really a GIS interface, and then there's the pavement view piece. So Scott talked about the road conditions and the work that we do from a preventative street maintenance perspective last week. And so that's where we currently track our street mileage and so forth. Sidewalks and bus shelters, and we have several bus shelters throughout the city. That was a program that's just within the last 5 to 10 years. Utility poles, this is something newer that we're utilizing in the Cartograph system. As new developments come online, we're inputting utility pole data, and then there's certain reporting features that go along with this software. I'm going to move into the ADG replacement, which is our financial management software. Typically an estimated useful life for this type of software is about 5 years. And we purchased ADG back in 1993 for an initial cost of about $28,000. Still a significant amount of money, but the estimate to replace this type of enterprise-wide software is at least $1 million plus. And that's because the modules that we have include accounting, sales tax, building permitting, municipal court. Some of the other areas are code enforcement, cash receipting, accounts receivables, payroll and personnel. And specific to payroll and personnel, that's where we use this system for open benefits, open enrollment. I mentioned building permitting, web sales tax collection, budgeting, fixed assets, and court management. So when I speak to the enterprise-wide function, that's really capturing the array of how this type of software touches the different departments. So those are the two IT projects that we're new that were added to the list that weren't prioritized in 2007. So those are 2 needs for your consideration. And I'm happy to answer any questions. Ann?
Ann. Thank you very much for the presentation. All the on the asset management, if we go back to the asset management, all the sign view, storm view, those are all modules you have now?
Yes.
Are there new modules that you haven't included on here that you would consider?
There are, and I didn't include those on here for the sake of time.
That's fine.
There's probably about 10 of them.
Okay.
And, Scott had mentioned last week that we have that access database for street permits. And that's really, something that, if we have an asset management system with greater functionality, we can transfer that data into that type of system.
Okay. Could this be used for permitting and the building and code and that whole group? Could this be expanded to that group, or are they standalone?
Potentially. Right now, building permitting is through ADG.
Okay.
I do believe that, and we'll know this more when we go out for RFP and we get hard proposals turned into us. Some of these cartograph-like software programs do have that functionality. And so that's where we'll be in a position to discuss the pros and cons of, do we stay with ADG, on the building permitting side, or do we go ahead and utilize
another module
feature
that
maybe Cartograph or something along those lines offers us.
Okay. And then with the upgrade, would you anticipate hiring more staff to support this, or would you utilize the existing staff if you were to?
We utilize existing staff.
Okay.
We're approaching this upgrade from the perspective that it's a software upgrade and that it shouldn't require additional staff. It should be a more efficient software program and help decrease.
Okay. And then I couldn't find anything on this, but I just have to ask. Along the lines of, could you share a system with another city? So could you share with Edgewater or Lakeside or Lakewood? I mean, is that a possibility to consolidate, kind of like we're doing with the fire department? But especially since I'm assuming some of this is going to be in the cloud, could you slice and dice and share a system?
Potentially. Have we had those discussions? No.
Okay.
I think, the potential's there because of the work that the police department's doing with the CAD RMS system and the regionalization efforts that are underway. So yeah, the potential's there. For a system like Cartograph, we'd have to be able to find a like system, and we'd have to have the ability to keep information separate.
Yeah, a Chinese wall.
So, that's a good question that I could ask my IT manager. I'm not aware of cities sharing this type of system, especially with a city our size. And then you look at, a city like Arvada or Lakewood.
Yeah, I was thinking of the smaller satellite, then you could somewhat charge them a fee, I'm just thinking out loud. So,
Thank you, Ann.
Great question, and I can ask.
Yeah.
Mike, you had a question?
So the software right now you're using is called Cartograph. What is ADG? Is that the name of the software you want to use?
No, that's the software we currently use. So it's American Data Group. And again, it's more of a
I thought it was
tiered-
Cartograph.
No, so they're 2 different systems. Cartograph is an asset management system. ADG is our enterprise-wide financial management software. So 2 completely separate systems. ADG, you've probably heard of J.D. Edwards, Oracle. Larger cities use those bigger systems that are more of your tier 1 system. So ADG is where payroll, our budget, our sales tax, our purchasing system, building permitting, municipal court, code enforcement, all of those different modules are tied into ADG.
So you want to update both of these systems. You don't want to take everything, go to everything to ADG or everything to Cartograph. You just want to update each system.
Yeah, there's separate software programs that need to be updated.
Thank you, Mike. Jesse?
I guess my question is, could it be put under one umbrella? I mean, is that just not good to do? Would it be less expensive if you could, the ADG and the Cartograph? I mean, is there one system out there that would be more beneficial? And
I'm not aware of any system like that. You know, the systems that are out there that we would be looking at to replace ADG systems like Tyler Technologies, they're becoming more dynamic and robust each year, but are they going to provide the level of functionality that a Cartograph-like system provides? No. Yeah. And keep in mind that even on the benefit side, so when you apply for a job with the city of Wheat Ridge, you go into what's called a NeoGov system, which is a separate software that we use just for our hiring and recruitment efforts, and that's interfaced with our website. ADG doesn't have that type of recruitment module that we can use. So there's limits to what ADG provides to us. And there's always going to be situations where, you know, you're going to have to use multiple softwares and interface those with, say, our website, or ADG needs to talk to Cartograph and that sort of thing. And that's where you get into customization. But there's no software package out there that's like one-stop shopping for municipal governments. If there was, and I invented it, you know, that would be a really great, lucrative business to be in. And, you know, it's a challenge. There's nothing out there like that on the market. Otherwise, we would definitely be taking advantage of that type of system.
okay, well, I just wondered.
Thank you.
Like you said, that was a lot of money, and I thought, you know, if there was a way to do that, that would be.
Tony, you had a comment?
Yeah, no, two questions. Asset management. You pay $45,000 a year for licensing. You want to upgrade for between $160,000 to $200,000. Okay, so you do the upgrade. Does the licensing going to change? Is it going to go up? Is it going to go down?
It'll probably stay about the same.
Okay, back to the licensing question. Is there's usually sometimes there's different services on licensing. In other words, basically you can get the one where, you know, you get a general maintenance for umpteen thousand per year. But then if you want the gold-plated one where you call up the tech service and you don't get charged any extra, that's extra. Where if you call up the tech service, they're going to nail you for $200 to $300 an hour. If you know, so I'm wondering, you know, which plan this is, or do you have the option to have different levels of plan?
I'm not aware that there's levels of Cartograph service. The $45,000 that we spend on licensing, more of a per user license, and you know, I did not get the number of licenses we have, but there is a support element to it.
Sure.
But I wouldn't refer to it as like a gold level support element. My IT manager and his staff do quite a bit of work with the engineers and others in parks that, public works rather, that utilize this software to figure out workarounds and that sort of thing. And that's also part of why I provided the direction that we needed to look at what else is out there in the market to make sure that we are getting the most for our dollars.
Okay. Next question, on the ADG replacement, is there any licensing ongoing? If you purchase the one for, let's say, an update to the $1 million, is there going to be a licensing fee for like umpteen so much per year?
There is, and I did not include that in here. I would say ADG licensing is probably somewhere in the ballpark of $35,000 a year.
Okay.
And again, you've got those different modules, and you have X number of users that utilize the different modules. So,
is there, speaking of modules real quick, and I don't want to make it a long question, but okay, usually you got the modules, you can bolt them on, as I call it. You bolt them on to that there. Can you upgrade these modules? I mean, instead of upgrading the whole system for $1 million, can you upgrade the accounting? Can you upgrade certain modules at a certain time, or is that even reasonable?
The one upgrade that we did just recently go through, and we have got one more component to go through on the sales tax module side, is going web enabled. But ADG is the type of software where when they do an upgrade, they phase in the different modules. So just within the last year, we converted and upgraded our general ledger and our budgeting module and our accounts receivable and payables module along with purchasing. So, did we get enhanced functionality to some respect? But it's really more of it's web enabled, so you can access it remotely and you click versus tabbing and using arrow keys and things like that.
I was just wondering if there's a way to phase it in, because I actually agree that you probably need to replace it or, upgrade it. But instead of doing a one fatal, this amount of money, is if you can, do it in some sort of phasing where you're not going to spend $1 million at once, but you spend so much. That's all.
And you are correct. This type of enterprise-wide system would have to be phased in over time because we are not staffed from an IT perspective, or even, for the city to take on, each department to take on their aspect with their modules that they work with. There's no way we could do it in one full swoop. We'd have to probably start with the financial management side of things, and then we would capture more of what I would call the spokes. So courts at one point, then building permitting, and then other areas, code enforcement. So, we're that 1 million plus cost is a projection.
Sure.
It could certainly be more, but that would be a phased in approach over time.
Thank you.
Ann? I just noticed that you gave a testimonial for ADG on their website. That's cool. They're a local company.
Yeah, I mean, they've been a good company to work with. But again, as I mentioned last week, the needs of the city are growing, and they've changed significantly since we've used the software. And so we're constantly balancing, working more efficiently and smarter, and how much work do you have to do manually with a computer software program. And so that, it's a need that we have. How does it compare to other needs? I mean, that's the question that you all have to ask. We do have the Capital Replacement Fund, which is a special fund that was set up in our budget with the purpose of setting aside a certain amount of money each year to help eventually build up enough money to replace a system like this. Typically, we transfer about $100,000 from the general fund into the capital replacement fund annually. However, a good example to show, the balancing act that we play on an annual basis is for 2016, a major IT project is replacement of our firewall. And we've deferred that for a couple years now, and that project's going to cost us about $230,000 to replace. There's some server upgrade that's involved in that. That's a project that'll be going out to bid here soon. So instead of keeping that in the general fund in the IT budget, we moved that to the capital replacement budget because we had funding available there, and it took pressure off of the general fund, and we were able to allocate those dollars in the general fund for other needs, equipment needs.
Heather, is there one of the projects or one of the asset systems that is a priority? And what sense of urgency is there for the replacements? Like, are they?
The asset management system, the replacement of the cartograph system is the priority. And again, we may be able to fund it in the 2017 budget or go as far out as 2018. But, I recognize as Director of Administrative Services that, requesting $1 million+ to replace our ADG system is a huge ask. There will become a point in time where there's an even greater need to replace it, but at this point in time, we can wait a couple years on that system. I would say the asset management system, given the need for increased functionality, especially in the public works engineering side of things, is the higher priority.
Jesse?
I was wondering, you know, with the expenditure, and I believe that it's needed as well, how long do you think it would take to implement this and before the citizens and employees and stuff see the benefit of it, and how long to get it rolling? Like you said, it would bounce from department to department to get them trained in it, in other words?
Are you talking about the ADG replacement?
Yes.
That could easily be a 3 to 5 year implementation. It would really depend on what other initiatives, major initiatives are going on, the workload in each department, but we would start with the financial management modules, because that's really the spine of the system if you think about it that way. That's where our chart of accounts are, that's where our budget system is, and then we'd go outward into the department. So it could easily be a 3 to 5 year implementation.
Stop me if I'm wrong, but these kind of systems, they're not like, say, my own personal computer, my firewall. It's not, your firewall is not just protecting, you know, a few documents. It's protecting many private and sensitive documents on the servers, correct?
Correct. You have to think about it within the context of a scale. The magnitude and the amount of information that we protect on a daily basis is not comparable to a home computer system. That's why these systems cost so much more from a funding perspective. I can tell you that, you know, from our purchasing processes and just how we budget here at the city, we're very mindful. And you know, I could use the word frugal in terms of the approach to looking at when we replace these types of systems and what's most appropriate in terms of the replacements.
I know on a personal level that this system, that price for the first one, the $160,000 to $2,000 for the upgrade, that price is relatively reasonable for a city. That cost for a healthcare system can be twice that, and so the system itself is almost vital now to citizens. I mean, of course, in 1970, computers just coming out. My dad's favorite story is how he had a cell phone, but it was in a briefcase. That is his first cell phone. Technology now is smaller, and on a personal level, yeah, you can have a firewall or you cannot have a firewall, and it doesn't really maybe affect you unless you're working on sensitive documents. But when it comes to a city, IT, kind of important. These systems, kind of important, and it does actually affect, you know, accessibility for the city. It enhances safety a bit for documents. You know, I highly doubt Wheat Ridge will ever get hacked, but hey, it could happen. So these kind of systems are important, and looking at the online quiz we did, asset management did not do very well. Out of all of them, it only got a very high score in enhanced public infrastructure and facilities, but you know, it kind of does contribute to more than what it was graded on this one. Mike?
My question's along those lines. If you were to get the ADG next year, 5 years from now, what are some things that you can sell? What can if I'm talking to my neighbor and he says, you don't need ADG, and I try to sell him on it, what are some things that the public, how are they going to see a value out of this? I mean, internally the staff can sell us on value, but I don't grasp it. What are some things that you're going to be able to do 5 years from now and say, wow, look at that, that's awesome, or look at these stats, or look how these combine, or can the citizens get on a website and track their taxes or something? I mean, what's 2 or 3 things that say, wow?
Well, that's a tough question to respond to, and I'm not dodging your question because technology changes at such a fast pace. I can give you some examples currently that I know about in terms of building permitting, for example, the ability for our building inspectors or chief building official to be out in the field and have surface tablets and be able to access the ADG system and look up and make changes to that system, update the system, if they provide a certificate of occupancy, if they have to do a stop work order. It's that type of functionality that I think is of benefit to the citizens. There are reporting aspects that some of these other systems provide that ADG just doesn't provide. You can't currently access the ADG system as a citizen and look to see what the city's paid to a certain vendor or anything like that. That's where you get more into the realm of open checkbook softwares. And our system, again, is more of a tier 3 system where it's difficult to even interface ADG to that type of software program to give that increased functionality to citizens. It's a good system. So yes, there's more that we would hope to be able to do with different technologies. Carly, I don't know if you want to speak to the work that you've done in talking with Tyler Technologies, if there's any real specific examples that come to mind. I think it's a matter of, that remote nature, being able to have staff out in the field and access the software and provide citizens with information. We don't have utility billing. If council does pursue some type of utility fee at some point, that could potentially be a feature that we would want to be able to utilize, where citizens can go online and be able to access a utility bill. That's not currently on the radar, but there's also limits with our current reporting capabilities within ADG. And so in terms of the user friendliness of the budget module, which I work with very closely between June and the December months, there's some limits and there's things that aren't as intuitive. And so again, when you take it back to looking at staff time and how much time we spend inputting data, and are we able to export it in a manner that's user friendly, or do we have to manipulate it so many different ways? So there's probably more behind the scenes benefits to ADG from the financial management side of things. When you get more into the court services, code enforcement, and building, that's where I think you touch more of the citizen aspects of it. Is that helpful?
Do these systems also save on paper? Straight up.
It depends on the department. I think overall the city is very mindful of our paper usage, and Joyce has led the work of a sustainability plan and works with a committee on a regular basis. So I think we're ever increasing in our mindfulness about not printing things, or if you print something, you print it double-sided. But the system itself, is it designed to save paper? No. But do we export to PDFs and email PDFs more so than printing a 30-page report? Yes.
We are going over time. I don't think we can't stop here just because we have to talk about this very quickly or slowly, depending on your mood. The online quiz, the ranking online, although I think that this chart was incredibly helpful to see graphs, there are a lot of people who, I also did it, ranked in the middle instead of on one side with a yes for a 10 and a no for a 0. Was it helpful? Was it helpful for everyone else to do that? Or was it just more confusing than it was helpful?
So the matrix that's at the bottom is the scale of 0 to 10. So the numbers in each of the squares are how many people rated that number in each category, and then the percentage of the overall group. So there's just 8 of you that answered the questions. And then the last column there is the weighted average. So it's kind of putting it all together and averaging out and that's what the color graph reflects. So it's just the average of the answers for that one piece.
So it's just the average, but not a weighted average.
Right. Yes, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. Yes, correct.
I was trying to figure out what the weighting was. Okay. So let me repeat back what you said using an example.
I'm sorry. I wasn't able to find the one you were talking about. First page. Okay. Yes. Mm-hmm.
So, okay, I understand.
So out of 8 people, the average score was 8.5.
Yes.
My understanding is that we did this to kind of take a look and make sure that we were all understanding. And just from a quick glance there, I think we are going to have some discussion about the criteria, because like on the contributes to a safer community, we had one person that gave it a 0 and one person that gave it a 10. And that would lead me to think that maybe we're not all on the same page on our understanding what the criteria is.
Yes. First, one of the things that we had agreed upon last meeting is that we would grade on a yes or a no for this. And yes, when it came to a 0 through 10, and it looked like you could choose anywhere in the between. And I'm not saying it didn't work out. I'm just saying that if we use this process again, this is why it's a 0 point or a 10 point, and this is why we didn't. This is why we chose not to do more points besides 0 or 10, is because when you start doing this, I could average 5 on all of these for some projects just because to me they're not that weighted. But if you stick to a 0, it does nothing for me, or 10, it does something for me and my perceived scale for the populace. Doing it from like 1 to 9, anywhere in there, you start to get different results than what you think you should get. Hans's contributes to safer community. One person thought it did not. One person thought it sort of did. And a couple of people thought in the middle. That does not quite get us where we need to be by the end of this process. Yes,
I
Martin?
completely disagree. So you're saying, and you voted, if you were for it, you put it at 10. If you weren't for it, you put a 0. So what's the point of 1 through 9? I'm not understanding that. I mean, to some degree, they did fulfill the category, and others I didn't. So, I mean, I didn't put any 0s. I either have kind of a 1 or a 2, or somewhere in the middle or towards the end if I really felt strongly about it. I thought that was the reason that we had talked about all these categories and all these numbers and getting a weighted average. Because if we just go 0 or 10, there's a possibility it could, end up half and half. And for the record, I don't think we need any more categories, and I think 1 through 10 is accurate. I think this is how we should vote. I thought the online poll was really convenient, quick, and easy, particularly since I have unreadable handwriting. It's much easier for me to do that. And I sat down last night thinking I had a long, several-hour project, and when I pulled up that thing on the computer and did it, I was like, wow, that was great. You know, I was done in 15 minutes. I hope I'm giving enough thought for each one, but I think we have everything on here we need.
I agree.
I agree also, and I really thought that the reason that we were running the test was just to make sure that we were all on the same wavelength on how this was working. That's what I read.
I'm not saying you're not bringing up good points. What I'm saying is what we discussed at the last meeting was that we would still be doing it as we had discussed at the first meeting, so long ago, was that we would be doing it at a 0 to 10 point scale. And I might have just forgotten that we had decided to go through a 0 through 10, and my bad, but still, it bears discussion. Maybe some of us thought that we were just doing a 0 to 10, and the rest of us decided, hey, let's do it scaled. But if we do it scaled, it really does change what we had discussed at the first meeting in how we vote for these things.
I think
Okay.
this is great.
I may not feel absolutely 0, absolutely 10. In some of these projects, it sort of does enhance public infrastructure. You know, it may, or I think it does, but I don't feel like it grades a 10.
Well,
Charles?
does 0 to 10 give us almost too many options? And if it was more condensed, like Ann, you all did it back 2007, there must have been a reason you went with 5. Does that bring it more into more consistency? Or would we have the same issue? 1 and 5, and people see it maybe differently. And so it's okay to have these differences.
Let's kind of gauge how strongly you feel about something, which is why we have a scale.
Yeah.
I think that also speaks to how you're interpreting it.
Yeah, and I would agree. And I don't mean this to be rude or anything, but I don't want to spend any more time rehashing this matrix. I think what we have works. And otherwise, we're going to need another meeting Tuesday, another one Wednesday, another one Thursday. At some point, we just have to kind of go with what we have.
So what I'm hearing is that you really liked this scale.
I did.
It was very helpful, and
It worked for me, yeah.
I'm not gonna lie, I actually really liked it. The first question, I just kind of did a yes to no, and then I was like, no, wait. This is actually really helpful for me weighing my question. It's not what we had discussed last time, but that's okay. We can change. And if everyone likes the scale, and since we can actually see what is the weighted on a chart, which doesn't have to be color-coded, by the way, Steph, thank you. But we could actually see, wow, the average for the first project, it enhances public infrastructure, but it's not that's very helpful to me, being a visual person.
I kind of know where I voted and where I am probably as well as you do. I think looking at it, I think it gives you a chance to, I kind of went in here and made some little marks next to it, knowing where I was and where you guys are, and I like seeing the numbers. I think things could have been a little bit up, a little bit down perhaps. I agree on the categories. And so I think it gives you, if we are going to have any little bit of discussion over this, kind of gives you a ballpark of where we are. If you're going to argue for something strongly, then it gives you an idea where you're at or why or how other people feel. I like it.
I think it should stay as it is. And the way I approach it, I kind of had one back and forth. I took 2 passes at this thing. I went kind of like 0, 5, and 10. And so then, and that's what I kind of weighted it that way first. Then I went back and looked at it again and said, okay, fine. Now, do I want to stay that, or do I want to put it in the middle somewhere? So I kind of did a two-pass system in my mind. The first pass was, let me get it real quick, and let me think, just first impressions, like, do. So I got it, into this bucket. And then I went back and said, okay, now I'm going to refine it, or I'm not going to refine it. And it seemed to work fine. I mean, that's one thought process. Everybody's going to do their own thought process and
Ann?
their own perception.
Sorry, thank you, Tony. Anne?
So I just poured through this real quick. I'm fascinated when there's a bulk of people that are on a 10 or a 0, and there's an outlier. So, and so I'd like to just talk about one outlier to try to understand the thinking, because it seems like contributes to a safer community.
For which project?
For any of them. For many of them, we clearly have right, that's the one that confused me. Like ADA, page 6 of 9. If you look at page 6 of 9. So, the fourth selection enhances accessibility, which is part of ADA, and we have a 0 in there with a 1 vote.
I blew my mind.
That's why, and also contributes to us. And if somebody voted this way, I'd like to understand the thinking, because that may move my needle more to the middle on some of these. But it's fascinating. I mean, here's the good thing. We seem to be all kind of in sync. That's the cool thing. That's what it seems. It's just some of the outliers are kind of interesting. And then, again, on ADA, we really are almost kind of split. We have 2 down here on enhances public infrastructure and facilities, and as a 0. And we have 1 in the middle and then some on the end. But it's...
What I don't understand is enriches citizens' lives. It also got not so much. But I hear you on the enhances community accessibility. Now, if you did vote it a 0 on this, I would like to hear your thought process on it so I can understand where you're coming from, if you would like to share. Whoever voted that way.
I didn't vote that way, but I mean, the point, what I'm hearing, at least, and I think it's going to come down to when the deadline is to submit this. But I think it's kind of been touched on, is it's almost interpretation, is what does each one of these categories really mean? And the perception, everybody's going to have a different take on this, you know, and I think that's, and I don't know if there's enough time to go through, you know, we got 2 more meetings after this, is if you want to just spend 15 minutes at one of these meetings and go through what, you know, try to narrow that down, or just leave everybody's own way of interpreting and voting.
Just go
with that.
with it.
And I think just
Maybe we
going with
just
it is probably the most reasonable way to meet the deadline without getting involved in what does safety mean. And then you go down this, you know, you go down and you talk about this, and in the end, you're still not kind of back where you started from sometimes.
This is a democratic process. We're all going to have varying different answers.
Yeah, absolutely. And interpretations of what each one of these categories mean.
And I agree, we're gonna have to get moving, otherwise we're gonna find
But I think the
way
numbers
short.
alone are meaningless unless we have the discussion about what, and find out what each other was thinking about on some of these. And I don't think we need to, you know, beat a dead horse, but...
In that case, I would like to suggest that possibly, if it is possible, to get all the projects on an online poll, just like this, and we all grade every single project. And then in the next meeting, we go down the list talking about how you as an individual got through it. Yes?
What I'd like to see, if it's possible, is when I'm voting, I want to be able to vote on all of them at the same time. I don't want to have to just do Clear Creek and then hit return and go to the next screen.
But it's SurveyMonkey.
I don't care what it is. I mean,
but that's how they...
No, if
I
that's
don't
the
care.
way the program working,
well, let's
there's
get a
not much
different
you
program
can...
or make our own. I want to be able to do it where I can see it across the whole scale all at once. That's the first
Do
point
you
I want
have
to
any
make.
familiarity with Google survey?
No, but what's
You're
the
trying
point?
to wait, so he's internally waiting as he sees all, instead of answering this one and moving on, You want to weight them
I want
as
to
a
I want
whole.
to compare them because our final product to them is a ranking. So we need the real to rank.
Then use that.
We do that in the end, wouldn't we? We've got to rank them on these specific.
Well, why are we going to do it twice? Like, I don't see a summary score down here of how these compare to each other. Like, Clear Creek, Gold Line, ADA, and Asset. Which out of these would be a number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4? I don't see a summary score in here. That's what I don't like about it. So we're sitting there talking, and that's great, and we can score all we want, but it doesn't get us any closer to the final result of our rankings that we have to provide. That's what I guess I don't like about it.
I hear what you're saying, but honestly, the only thing that it is missing is a total of the weighted average. That's what you're missing. And to compare every single quiz with comparison weighted averages. And I'm not at all sure if
I feel like
SurveyMonkey
you can
do
make this
that.
in Excel. I mean, as easy as.
Essentially, what is it? And although I don't need to do them one at a time like you would feel too, but I agree with your main point is that which one won? Which one
Yeah,
got the
we
highest
don't
score?
even know who won.
Out of these 4, which one's 1, which one's 2, 3, and 4? And that can't be too hard to tweak.
Isn't that the Excel?
There's the answer.
Yes, we can absolutely do that. Just because this was a test, we weren't necessarily kind of like checking all the boxes on all of those things.
Can you do them all at the same time when you can see them all on one screen?
And I'm not 100% sure on that, but I can definitely look into it. And at least if you can't see them all at the same time and rank them all at the same time.
Why don't we revert to the Excel?
Right, we could definitely do
revert
that.
to your Excel file.
Although some of us have an obsession with Excel, some of us absolutely hate it as a program because it is an evil thing and it is outdated and awful. But that's just my personal opinion on it. And if I get overruled, that's fine.
I do too.
I've had the urge to punch Excel in the face before.
You may want to, what I did is I took your Excel sheet, and what I did is I took away, well, I just hid things. And so I did real quick is I just want to make sure I had the right number of projects. So I grouped them. I grouped them as PTR. So I started that way, and I just went down. And then what I did across the sheet is I just put this so that I write in there, like tonight, I actually changed my score in some of the presentations on asset management. So that in the end, I'm going to look that over again, and I'll make it. And then once, however if you want to do it through the survey, then I'll just sit down and I'll put the numbers off of this sheet into that. And then, but if you want to do it, send a sheet out like this. And what I did is I categorized them by PRTs, and then RSs, and that so that I could see that group as a group. And then I just went across. It took me about 15 minutes to do.
Right. I think to Terry's point that if we can show each other our scores, and that creates a starting point to talk with each other and say, hey, Ann, you scored that at number 10. I only has a number 5. Why do you think it's so important? And now we have a topic of discussion to say, well, I think it's important because of this, this, and this. And I come back and say, well, I think it's not important because of this. And then everybody else who's listening learns as well. So
I really think that the discussion on accessibility, that's a great example. Whoever did the 0, it's not that they did a 0, but we need to hear what they were thinking. Did somebody interpret the criteria differently, or is there something that we all need to think about it? We all might move our scores up or down.
I agree. Thank you for that. It's a good, yes, this scoring way is a good way to start a topic. It might need more enhancement via Excel. So enthusiastic for that. I'm not in agreement needing to see every single, but this is just me personally. I don't need to see when I'm grading them. I like to do them individually, and then I would like to look at, as a group, everybody's individual scoring on the projects, and then see where they all fall. But that's just me personally. I feel that doing them individually is kind of the point. One of the main points of this is that as citizens, what do you find the most important? And then sitting down and talking, hey, I think accessibility is way more important for certain projects, and it needs to be way higher than others, but on other projects, I could give a flying.
That was brought up last week, that you may feel the first one you may rank and the second one you rank, and then you get towards the end and you see some other ones that may have more importance to you. You kind of want to go back and re-rank them. I can't remember who brought it up, but I thought that was a good point.
All right.
But, you know, here it leads to the question is we have 2 more meetings, and maybe this is what we need to just talk about now, is that what are we going to do in those next two meetings, and how does the concerns of what's been brought up here, how do we address them with the time that we have? So in other words, basically, what the next 2 meetings, what's going to happen in those next 2 meetings?
Those next 2 meetings, we need to, I do not believe we need to hear from anyone else, but I do think Tuesday, we need to come together, having graded all the projects on a personal level, and see if, after a discussion, if we need to hear from anyone one last time on the last project. I mean, personally, we need to, right now, not right now, but we need to score the projects. That is vital, that we score the projects before the next meeting, to know if we need any more information. Yes, Charles?
As I think you've all mentioned, we'll go ahead with a scoring of all the projects. Carly will just expand the Survey Monkey. Is that how it will work? But then that can be an additional, a supplement to that.
I'm with him, though. I would like to know what was 1, 2, 3, 4, and then as well as you're talking about discussing it, okay, well, why do you think it's 1? Maybe,
It
I mean,
may
if
be
you
that-
know it's 1 through 12, or what do we have, 15?
But that will be the entree into our discussion, and I would hope.
But I would like to know what the winner, and
The rank, what your final rankings were.
Right.
And it may be that, out of this list of them, we generally are on the same page on most of them. We only need to discuss a few. I hope. That'd be nice.
I feel that what Tony had mentioned on his Excel sheet, that he had put them in project groups. And if you put them in project groups, you could have a winner of each project, and then we could move forward from that. But I think that this could be a little selfish. It could just be how I like to do things. But not seeing the whole picture and having to focus on one project at a time, it kind of, in a way, gives you a different perspective on the project. Taking Clear Creek Crossing by itself, I gave it way more importance than if I had seen all the projects all in one go, just because it makes me stop and think about it. It does not, if I saw all the projects, I'd want to just zoom through all of them as fast as I could and then go back. Whereas this already automatically, seeing them one at a time, makes you stop, look at each individual project, and then score them. But I do want to see a winner. But SurveyMonkey, you just probably just need to add a few more parameters, and it will give you a score on the weighted average.
It can give us a score, but
Which
can
would
we
give you a
go
winner.
back? I can't remember the survey because I was kind of annoyed when I was taking
Yes,
it.
you can go
I
back.
adjusted.
You can go back?
Yes.
I did adjust, I tweaked it back and forth.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
But you
have a
can't
good
see it
point.
all at once, yeah.
You can't see it all. But how's this sound? If you take the spreadsheet, you apply your numbers, and then you take 5 minutes and you just transcribe your numbers into the system, and then they have everything electronically. And then that way you can weight it internally, and then you're just using that as a data entry form. So the one thing I was going to suggest is this chart doesn't mean much to me.
Me either.
I mean, we could remove the chart, have everything on one page, because right now it wraps the last 2 items, goes to the back page. I mean, the chart really, I read the numbers much more quickly than I
Oh,
do.
I like the chart.
What does the chart tell you?
The chart to me tells me, at a quicker glance, just where everything is hitting. Then Yeah, I agree that you could probably squeeze the numbers into a smaller so it's all on one page, but to me, the chart gives me the average faster than looking down along the lines, the average.
Good point.
But
I agree.
Okay.
that's why I like charts. I
Maybe
just
shrink
do.
the chart then, just so that the
Well,
last
that's
two.
probably most definitely a possibility.
Yeah, yeah.
So just shrink the chart.
Yeah, just shrink the chart so that 8 and 9, or whatever, appear on the,
Yeah, the last two criterias can appear on the same page instead of, yes, visibility is some,
I like both. I mean, going down, if further study down here, looking at the numbers, but at a quick glance, if you want to look up, you see the chart and it's like, okay.
to me, when you look at a chart, I can flip through these and say, wow, let's see. The first couple ones really got some high marks and the other ones.
The first page on this chart should be a graph that shows who won in all 4 projects.
But then the
And
last.
and the score
last-
out of 90. That's the summary chart that should be on the front page.
So you just would like a summary chart?
That's the starter, and then if you want to dig in the details, just like every report in this 3-inch thick binder, it can be the same thing.
yeah, yeah. Because I can see, after we see the ranking, I can see me advocating for one that is down here that I'd like a jury. I'd like to advocate for this one to be moved up a little bit because, and here are my reasons why.
Is that a possibility?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot more we could do. Like I said, this was just kind of for the
Oh, it's great.
conversational piece, so it wasn't really worked out as like the best format for showcasing the data. So we can definitely work with it, and I've heard some of the comments, and we'll try to figure out a way to make all of those happen.
And when you get it, is it interactive? Is it something that when we're sitting here discussing, like if we wanted to look at how enhances public infrastructure, can you like pull that up for all the projects so we can see how that compares?
Yeah, I can definitely do that, especially with more time I can put the SurveyMonkey kind of back end up there, and then when you guys ask questions, we can specifically go to certain places and that sort of thing.
But one of the things, can we do it as we sit here? Can we take a SurveyMonkey at the end? Just was wondering if it was a possibility.
So you'd have to have computers. We do have these voting clickers, right? I know we all do have computers in our hand. So we could do that. I don't know. That might work live, SurveyMonkey. We do have the voting clickers that we used for the Create Your 38 process. Mm-hmm. So if you wanted to do live voting, it might make sense to use those clickers because it's a little bit more instantaneous. But I'm pretty sure if you did use a SurveyMonkey link, the same link, we could probably make that work too.
I have heard almost a consensus, I haven't asked for a consensus, that this could be the best way for us to go forward with scoring. It could be the best way for getting right off the bat just an average for everything. And I personally think that live voting would be an asset when we get to the point where we need to discuss each criteria. But, Ann?
There's 23 projects on here. If we all vote in the next week on our SurveyMonkey, we start next meeting with a result chart that shows the results of our 23 projects and where we stand. Then we got a place to talk, and then we can actually make some meaningful discussions.
Yeah.
Next week, don't we need that by Tuesday?
Yes. Yep.
And I also just wanted to point out there are 2 projects on the project list that are land banking projects that we actually have not discussed. So we can have Patrick Goff come in to discuss those on Tuesday, and it shouldn't take much time, but I just wanted you to know that there were 2 that we have not yet talked about.
I feel that we could still rank them due to the fact that some people changed their rankings after hearing, after we saw more of Charles. I changed my ranking on the Clear Creek crossing, but I did that manually, and I think that we can do that. I think that if we rank every project before next meeting so that we can discuss them and then also hear from the land banking, we can really move forward very quickly. Yes. Sorry, no, I knew where it was. Gold Line Station. That's what I meant. Thank you.
I have a question for the group. And this was one of my dilemmas. Just as an example, on Clear Creek Crossing, there's a number of criteria: provides new or enhanced leisure services, enriches citizens' lives, provides environmental sustainability. How do you vote on those when you don't know what the proposal for the project is?
I agree, neighborhoods and such, how do you know?
Take your best guess,
I took my best guess.
I believe-
took my jaded best guess.
I believe at this point, take your best jaded guess. Take your best informed opinion as a citizen of the city. As a citizen of the city, I know that the Clear Creek Trail is something I use a lot. It is very close to my house. So, yeah, I'm going to mark that. As infrastructure, I can just say that from living in Vermilion, South Dakota, that these things are kind of very important, or else you just get swamps. So it's more like take your life experience, apply it to these projects. Now, environmental sustainability, that is subjective. It's not as a scientific, but when grading, yeah, it's a little subjective to your personal opinions on environmental sustainability.
Well, I would
Oh,
disagree
sorry.
with that, but,
Terry.
I just think we're making some big guesses.
We are. We recognize that. Hey, I have a favor for Carly. So if we vote on all of them, including the land banking, and you get us a ranking of all of them, is there any way that you can print for each of us how we scored on all 20-something, so that we don't have to bring the Excel spreadsheet with our numbers? Because if we do dig in and I say, somebody says, okay, who scored 0 on this and why, everybody can look at their sheet and say, okay, I did, and let's talk about it. Is there a way? Yeah.
Yeah, print
That
out
would be
everybody's individual answers.
Individual answers.
And then I can have the rest of it up on and we can go through each.
But you don't have to share everybody's individual answers
Right,
can be right in front of them. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you. It'll just help.
One more question. On SurveyMonkey, can you give a more lengthy description of the projects?
Absolutely. As I was saying before, since it was just kind of the test run and just the projects that we had talked about, we didn't kind of go into that. But yeah, we can make sure that it's.
Was it easier for you guys or not? Is it easier for us to go through Excel spreadsheets, or is it easier for SurveyMonkey?
Well, the reason why SurveyMonkey is nice to use is that it kind of does all the calculations on its own, which obviously Excel can do the same, but it kind of puts everybody's data in one place. So there is an advantage to that, but it's up to you. We're fine with doing whatever you'd like.
One of the last things, mostly because I think that what would be helpful for Terry and some others is that if the projects right now could have a little bit more description on their costs, a little bit more description on, if they have them, their environmental impact and that kind of stuff, if that could be given. I'm not sure what the amount of words you can put in, not like the full description, just, yes, it is why we have the binder, but the binder doesn't actually say environmental impact on all of them. So, it would be a little helpful if we could get cost, at least cost on there.
So just to clarify, are you talking about environmental and cost information that you do not have right now?
Yes, that we do not have.
So I can definitely ask the directors for
And if
that,
they have it.
but I don't know if it's something that I can put onto it if it's not.
Because that's what we've kind of heard from a
But
lot
I
of
can
the.
definitely talk to them about it.
What we've heard from a lot of the directors is that they don't have costs yet because they haven't been moved up on the priority list. they've just been playing with ballpark numbers. So that's kind of what we're doing here is, can we move them up so that they can get better numbers, so that they can start the process to get more environmental information, more numbers? I mean, that's really what we're kind of doing here.
I also think that it's prioritized obviously we're trying to show what's important now, because, you know, if we don't prioritize it and get it going, doesn't matter what you vote for, the cost is going to go up, point blank. So, you know, if it's ranked highly, then I guess you better get on it, because, you know, if the people are saying so. So, you know, you know today that it's going to be more expensive next week probably than it is today. I mean, you know, so I think that prioritizing and getting it up there is going to solve some of that myself.
So I think I would recommend for the survey to just keep it a couple line description of each project and to do the ranking all the way through. And then I can speak with the directors about a little more environmental information and cost estimates, what they can come up with. And so I can have them come on Tuesday or on Thursday or both to answer questions and provide a little bit more information. But I don't think that that's probably realistic for getting on the survey to send out. Absolutely. Yep.
I'm thinking that it's probably going to be most beneficial for their time to let us discuss on Tuesday, and then if we need them to come, we have questions, we could ask them to come on Thursday. So they're not sitting around while we talk. They have
Ann?
lives.
Thank you. Anne, you were... Okay.
I think you got to get the draft done by Tuesday, and then at least you have something in place to discuss, or else, you know, time is going to go by and we still haven't gone anywhere. So to me, the draft is Tuesday.
Our last two meetings are next week, and I think I agree with Terry, Ann, and Tony, and everybody else who's nodding, which is everyone, that we should just do the survey, we should discuss, and if we need more information, Thursday.
I just want to make one more comment. So it'll be good to see the cost involved, even in the description or something, just the cost involved in there. Not that that would actually, it could affect my choice, but I have a feeling what it'll do is after we have the hard ranking, you may look and see, okay, this is my opinion, the asset management, if it's 160 to 200 grand, and some of these other projects are really big, even though it ranks low because, quite frankly, the criteria it's not sexy, it's not a sexy project, and it doesn't ring all these bells, but you could probably squeeze it in somewhere up above. And so that's where I want to see the hard ranking and the dollar signs, because we may start kind of moving some around.
Yeah, so little projects aren't waiting for 15 years for a $10 million project to get funded.
In light of the $40 million Anderson project, the upgraded technology looks pretty easy. I mean, that's, you know, and my opinions changed because last time I did homework, I was like, that can wait. Now I'm like, well, you know, now that I see some dollars, that affects my decision. Yeah. Yeah.
Seeing that, I brought up my ranked it higher.
Yeah.
Well, we have to remember as well, I think some of these figures are going to be ballparks as well. As close as, okay. Great.
One of these directors for numbers, even if they gave a range, you know, like the 160 to 200,000 for the upgrade, at least that starts to narrow it down from like, well, is this $10 or is this 10 million? You know, order of magnitude. That's all you can expect at this time, and whatever they can provide could help.
Do we need a motion? Can I have a motion to get this approved, that this is the way we want to move forward? Okay. Can I get an approval? Okay. This is the way we'll go forward then, is with this Survey Monkey, with the improved as we discussed, and then on the next meeting, we will just be discussing our rankings. All right. Thank you. Sorry. Hold on. We are not adjourned yet because Ann is asking another question. Microphone, Ann. No? Okay. We are adjourned. We're done.